In this video, I am going to be talking about 10 single-player games that are absolutely worth your money. You won't regret buying any of them, so let's look at the first game on my list. Banisher's Ghosts of New Eden. Banisher's Ghosts of New Eden is one of those games that sneaks up on you with how immersive and emotional it can be. At first glance, you might think it's just another action RPG, but once you're in it, the storytelling grabs hold of you in a way that not many games manage to do. You're thrown into this haunting world where you play as a pair of Banishers people who fight spirits and the supernatural, but there's this real, deeply personal layer to it all that elevates the entire experience. Now, here's where the game gets you the relationship between the two main characters, Anti and Red. These two aren't just your typical let's fight monsters duo. They've got history, they've got baggage, and their connection feels so genuine. And then there's the twist. Anti is a ghost herself. You've got this crazy dynamic where one partner is literally not of this world, and that impacts everything from how you explore the world to how the combat plays out. You get these emotional story beats mixed in with your more traditional action, and it's honestly such a refreshing take. From a gameplay perspective, Banishers mixes its combat up by letting you switch between Red, the physical fighter, and Anti, who uses her ghostly powers to handle enemies in creative ways. The synergy between these two in battle feels slick, and you're constantly thinking about how to balance their strengths in each fight. It's got a bit of that tactical RPG feel where you're not just mashing buttons, you're thinking about how to use both characters to solve whatever supernatural problem is thrown your way. But what really makes this game stand out and worth your money is how it nails that balance between action and heart. The world of New Eden is beautifully bleak. There's this sense of mystery and sadness in every corner you explore, and the game doesn't shy away from heavy choices. You'll have to make moral decisions throughout the game, and trust me, they're not the kind where you can just breeze through. Every choice feels impactful, and the game makes sure you feel the weight of what you've done. And that kind of decision making adds so much replayability because you're going to want to see how different choices play out. And then there's the visual design and atmosphere. It's stunning in this eerie, almost poetic way. The game really leans into its ghostly theme. Think dark forests, haunted towns, and abandoned villages with just enough creepiness to keep you on edge. It's not a horror game, but it has that perfect mix of tension and beauty that makes exploring the world a treat. The attention to detail and how the environments are crafted makes you want to just take your time and soak it all in. So, if you're looking for a single-player experience that brings both heart-pounding action and an emotional, story-driven narrative, Banisher's Ghosts of New Eden is absolutely worth your money. It's got depth, it's got style, and most importantly, it's got heart, something that's rare in a lot of action RPGs nowadays. Mafia Definitive Edition. Mafia Definitive Edition is the kind of game that takes you back to an era where story-driven games ruled. And this remake, it's not just a fresh coat of paint, it's a complete overhaul that brings the original 2002 classic roaring back to life. If you're someone who appreciates deep narrative, cinematic flair, and a setting that pulls you in, then this is an absolute must-play. So, the story is set in the 1930s and it follows Tommy Angelo, a regular cab driver who gets pulled into the world of organized crime. It's got everything you'd want from a mob tale, betrayal, loyalty, power, and of course plenty of action. The beauty of Mafia Definitive Edition is that while it's set in the gritty underworld of crime, it's not just about shooting up gangsters and being tough. It's about Tommy's journey, how he goes from being just an average guy to getting swallowed up by the Mafia. And the characters around him, from Paulie to Don Salieri, are written with such attention to detail that you genuinely care about what happens to them. Visually, the game is a masterpiece. The city of Lost Heaven looks absolutely stunning, especially considering it's set in the 1930s. From the vintage cars to the period-accurate architecture, it feels like stepping into a time machine. The developers didn't just focus on making it look good though, they nailed the atmosphere too. Driving through the city at night with the rain pouring down and jazz playing on the radio is one of those moments that makes you stop and just take it all in. It's an open world game, but not in the modern sense where there are a million side quests. Instead, it's more focused and streamlined, which makes the storytelling tighter and more impactful. Speaking of driving driving, this is where Mafia Definitive Edition shines compared to other games in the genre. The driving mechanics aren't over the top or arcade, like they feel grounded and authentic to the era. And if you're into realism, they even brought back the option to turn on simulation mode where cars handle a bit more like they would have in real life back then, slow, heavy, and a bit unwieldy. It adds a layer of immersion that you don't always get in other games. Now, let's talk about the combat. The gunplay is smooth, and while it's not as complex or fast-paced as modern shooters, it fits the tone of the game perfectly. There's a weight to the weapons, and you can't just run and gun. There's a tactical side to each shootout that makes you think about cover, positioning, and timing. And when you mix that with the intense, often brutal cutscenes, you've got a game that knows how to keep the tension high from start to finish. But what makes Mafia Definitive Edition worth your money, above all, is how it delivers an old-school cinematic experience. There's a reason why people still talk about the original Mafia after all these years. The game's ability to tell a grounded, emotionally driven story about a guy who gets in over his head in the world of crime feels timeless, and with this remake, they've polished it up without losing any of the heart or integrity of the original. Every mission, every dialogue exchange, every twist feels like it has a purpose. And let's be real, it's rare to get a single-player game these days that feels this focused. You're not bogged down by endless side missions or unnecessary distractions. Everything you do is in service of the story, and that's what makes it so special. It's a love letter to fans of the original, but also a perfect entry point for anyone who never got a chance to play it back in the day. If you're craving that classic crime story vibe with modern visuals and refined gameplay, Mafia Definitive Edition is 100% worth your time and money. It's one of those rare remakes that doesn't just improve on the original, it honors it, and in some ways surpasses it.
You won't ever need to worry about me.
Okay then. Welcome to the family.
Plague Tale Requiem. Okay, so let's talk about A Plague Tale Requiem. If you're into intense, story-driven games that mix a whole lot of heart with a ton of rats, yes rats, this one's gonna grab you right from the start. You play as Amisha trying to protect her little brother Hugo while dealing with the fact that, well, Hugo's got some, let's say, unique powers like controlling a literal army of plague-ridden rats. Yup, it's as wild as it sounds. Now, I know what you're thinking, a game about rats. Really, but hear me out, this game is gorgeous, like, they've really upped the visuals here. The medieval setting is brought to life with insane detail, whether you're sneaking through peaceful villages or running for your life through ruined landscapes. And the lighting? Yeah, it's one of those games where you just stop sometimes to admire the scenery right before a horde of rats comes at you. Of course, it's a weird mix of beautiful and gross, but it works. Gameplay-wise, you're getting that same stealthy, puzzle-solving goodness from the first game, but it's even more refined. Amisha's not just your average kid anymore, she's ready to take on the world, or at least a few nasty soldiers and, you know, those rats again. She's got a sling, a few more tricks up her sleeve, and a lot more attitude this time around. She's like, I've had enough of this crap, and you can feel it. And then there's Hugo. Poor kid, he's sweet, but he's also got these creepy powers that are getting harder to control. It adds this layer of tension where you're not just worried about bad guys, you're worried about what's happening to him. It gets emotional, man. You'll be like, Amisha, save your brother 1 minute, and then, wait, should I be worried about this kid the next? Now, let's talk about the rats. Yes, they're back and more terrifying than ever. They're like their own character in the game at this point, swarming through the environment like some twisted force of nature. It's honestly impressive how the game handles these massive waves of rats. And yeah, it's freaky every time they show up, but hey, if you're a fan of heart-pounding moments where you're frantically looking for a light source to keep them at bay, this game has you covered. And here's the thing, this isn't just a game about killing soldiers and dodging rats. Requiem has a real story with real heart. You'll find yourself genuinely caring about these characters, especially the bond between Amisha and Hugo. Sure, they're dealing with some pretty messed up stuff, but the way they look out for each other, it hits hard. You'll laugh, you'll cry, and yeah, you'll probably freak out when the rats come for you, but that's all part of the fun. If you're looking for something that'll pull you in with a great story, some stealthy action, and a whole lot of emotional weight, A Plague Tale Requiem is totally worth your money. Plus, you get to feel like a hero while battling waves of rats, and who doesn't want that kind of experience? Yakuza Like a Dragon Infinite Wealth. Alright, so let's talk about Yakuza Like a Dragon Infinite Wealth, or as I like to call it, the game where you can go from fighting thugs in the streets to managing a chicken that runs your real estate empire. Yeah, it's that kind of wild. If you've never played a Yakuza game before, buckle up. This series has always been known for its over-the-top blend of serious crime drama mixed with the most absurd, laugh-out-loud moments you could ever imagine. And Infinite Wealth, it's cranking that up to 11. You're still following the lovable and kind of goofy Ichiban Kasuga, who's just trying to figure out life after, well, everything kind of falls apart. But this time he's in America, so get ready for some good old Yakuza Chaos American style. Let's start with the combat. If you played Yakuza Like a Dragon, you already know that the series went from beat 'em up to turn-based RPG, which was a bold move, and honestly, it totally works. The combat's got this ridiculous mix of classic RPG elements like choosing moves from a menu, but in true Yakuza style, you're summoning crabs, throwing bicycles at enemies, and somehow turning everyday objects into weapons of mass destruction. It's like they saw your favorite childhood RPG and said, how can we make this 10 times crazier, and they nailed it. Ichiban is back and still full of that same lovable, slightly clueless energy that makes him such a great character. He's the kind of guy who's got a heart of gold, but somehow always ends up in the most absurd situations. And trust me, this game's gonna take him to some really weird places. From what we've seen so far, it looks like Ichiban's got to deal with some serious stakes again, but you just know there's going to be plenty of room for his usual goofy side quests. I mean, we're talking about a game where you can walk into a karaoke bar and end up in a full-blown music video, or spend hours running a side business selling like energy drinks or some nonsense. But don't let all the craziness fool you. Yakuza knows how to tell a damn good story when it wants to. And that's why Infinite Wealth is going to be worth your money. Beneath all the insanity, the Yakuza series has always had these deep emotional stories about loyalty, betrayal, and what it means to be part of something bigger. And Ichiban, he's just this guy who you can't help but root for. No matter how wild things get, you'll be invested in his journey. Now, let's not forget about the side content. In typical Yakuza fashion, there's going to be so much random stuff to do that you'll probably forget about the main story for hours. We're talking mini games that range from surprisingly complex business management sims to, well, whatever bizarre thing the developers come up with next. You could be catching rare fish 1 minute, then helping some dude dressed as a mascot solve his existential crisis the next. It's like an RPG where every side quest is a meme waiting to happen. Oh, and the visuals, they've cranked them up too. Everything is vibrant and packed with detail, from the neon lit streets to the crazy character designs. It's that perfect balance of looking gritty enough to sell the crime drama but flashy enough to remind you that this is a Yakuza game and anything can happen. So, if you're looking for a game that offers you a mix of heartfelt storytelling, insane combat, and some of the wildest, most entertaining side activities you'll find in any RPG, Yakuza Like a Dragon Infinite Wealth is absolutely worth your money. Whether you're here for the serious moments or just want to see how weird things can get, spoilers, they get really weird, this game has you covered. Kingdom Come Deliverance. Alright, let's get real for a second. Kingdom Come Deliverance is not your typical RPG. This is a game that says, hey, you know what would be fun? Dropping you into 15th century Bohemia and making you live the actual medieval life, no magic, no dragons, just pure unforgiving realism. And weirdly enough, that's exactly why it's awesome. You play as Henry, a regular guy. No, seriously, just some random blacksmith's son who's suddenly thrown into a civil war. And let me tell you, Henry isn't some super powerful hero right off the bat. He's clumsy, kind of useless at fighting in the beginning, and barely knows how to read. It's like starting an RPG on hard mode, but in the best way possible. Because when you finally start getting good at things like sword fighting, or even just not starving to death, it feels earned. Now, the whole shtick with Kingdom Come Deliverance is that it's grounded in reality. You're not saving the world from ancient evils here. Your biggest challenge might be something as simple as trying to win a duel or convince a noble to help you. And don't even get me started on the combat system. If you think you're gonna swing your sword around like a hack and slash game, think again. The swordplay here is insanely detailed with actual historical techniques. You've got to pay attention to angles, timing, stamina. It's like they took medieval combat and made it into a rhythm game, but with more blood. Speaking of blood, yeah, you're gonna die a lot. There's a good chance you'll lose a few early fights and maybe even get a little frustrated, but once you get the hang of it, there's nothing more satisfying than taking down an opponent in this game. Every fight feels like a real test of skill, and the stakes are high because one wrong move and it's curtains for Henry. And here's where the game gets you, it's massive. The open world of Bohemia is filled with villages, castles, forests, and a ton of history. And when I say history, I mean real history. The game doesn't hold your hand either. You're going to have to figure out quests, talk to people, and deal with all the little details like making sure Henry's not walking around in muddy clothes or smelling like he hasn't bathed in weeks. Yes, the game cares about that. You want to impress a noble? Better wash up first because nobody's gonna take you seriously if you look like you just rolled out of a pigsty. What's great about Kingdom Come is how it combines this hardcore realism with a sense of freedom. You can go off and explore, get into side quests, and really immerse yourself in the world. Want to become a master of sword fighting or learn to read so you can forge documents? Go for it. Or maybe you just want to live the simple life and get drunk at the tavern. This game lets you do all of that, but it makes you work for it, which is kind of refreshing in a time when most RPGs just hand everything to you. So if you're someone who wants a break from the typical RPG fantasy world and is ready for something that's a bit more grounded in reality with a healthy dose of blood, sweat, and tears, Kingdom Come Deliverance is definitely worth your money. It's challenging, it's immersive, and honestly it'll make you appreciate just how hard life was back in the day. Plus, it's kind of fun knowing that your biggest enemy might just be a poorly cooked piece of meat. Seriously, this game is that real. Mad Max. Alright, if you've ever thought to yourself, man, I wish I could just blast through a post-apocalyptic desert, smash cars, and be an absolute badass, then Mad Max is the game for you. Seriously, this game is like being dropped into an action movie where you get to live out all your wildest fuel-guzzling fantasies. It's like Fury Road meets an open-world RPG, but with way more time to mess around and way less Charlize Theron. You play as Max, a guy who, let's be honest, has seen better days. He's basically got one goal: survive the wasteland. But it's not as simple as just driving around and avoiding explosions, though there are a lot of explosions. You've got to rebuild your car, the magnum opus. And let me tell you, this is where the fun kicks in. The game lets you fully customize your ride, from the armor to the weapons, and you'll need it because this world is brutal. Everyone's out for blood, and your car is your best friend. Treat it well. Now, the open world here, it's massive, and I mean massive. It's the post-apocalypse, so don't expect lush forests or sparkling oceans. Nah, it's all about that sandy, desolate wasteland, but somehow it never gets boring. You'll be driving through dunes, scavenging for parts, and running into some of the nastiest warbands you can imagine. The car combat is honestly some of the best out there. You've got spikes, flamethrowers, harpoons, pretty much everything you need to turn your enemies' vehicles into scrap metal. And it feels so satisfying when you take down a convoy of raiders by flipping their trucks in the middle of a high-speed chase. It's like you're starring in your own Mad Max movie. But it's not all driving and blowing stuff up though. There's a lot of that. Don't worry, Max himself can throw down when he needs to. It's got that weighty, crunching feel that makes every punch and kick land hard. If you've played any of the Batman Arkham games, you'll feel right at home here. Max isn't as agile as Batman, but when he swings a punch you feel it, and when you get surrounded by enemies, it's a pure brawl to survive. You'll be breaking bones, countering attacks, and smashing heads with whatever blunt object you can find. It's messy. But hey, this is the wasteland, it's not supposed to be pretty. One of the coolest things about Mad Max is how it captures that lonely, desolate vibe of the movies. You're out there in the middle of nowhere just trying to survive. The sun's beating down, your water supply is running low, and you're scavenging every little thing you can find to stay alive. It gives you that sense of desperation, but in a way that's still really fun. Plus, the more you upgrade your car and gear, the more you feel like a total badass. By the end, you're basically a one-man army, which feels pretty damn good. The story, while not super deep, gets the job done, and it's all about survival and revenge. And let's be real, you're not here for some Oscar-winning narrative. You're here to crush warlords, blow up cars, and survive in the wasteland, and that's exactly what the game gives you. There are also plenty of side activities like taking down enemy camps, searching for scrap, and even building up strongholds. It's the kind of game where you can easily get lost for hours just messing around, upgrading your car, and clearing out the map. If you love open world games with lots of action, fast-paced car combat, and the feeling of being a total badass in a gritty, desolate world, Mad Max is absolutely worth your money. It's not trying to reinvent the wheel, but what it does really well. Just make sure to buckle up because things get wild in the wasteland. The Witcher 3. Alright, let's not even pretend here The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt is a straight up masterpiece. If you haven't played it yet, what are you even doing? This game is like the gold standard for RPGs, and it's been that way since it launched. We're talking about a massive open world, a story that hooks you from the get-go, and enough side quests to keep you busy for. Well, let's just say a long time and leave it at that. You play as Geralt of Rivia, who's basically the medieval version of the coolest guy you know, but with more scars and less small talk. He's a professional monster hunter with a gruff voice, silver hair, and a way with the ladies. And by way with the ladies, I mean the guy has romantic options like he's shopping at a mall. But it's not just about flirting, this is a game about choices, big and small, that really impact the world around you. Plus you get to slice monsters in half with a sword. What's not to love? Now, the world of The Witcher 3, it's huge. We're talking about sprawling forests, bustling cities, creepy swamps, and snowy mountains, all packed with things to do. And the best part, every single quest feels meaningful. You're not just fetching someone's lost sheep though, let's be real. There's probably a sheep quest in there somewhere. Every side quest tells its own mini story, and some of them are just as good as the main plot. You'll be doing everything from slaying griffins to solving local mysteries, and none of it ever feels like filler. Combat is a blast too. It's not just about hacking away at enemies. Geralt's got style. You've got your two swords, one for monsters and one for humans, and a bunch of magical signs that give you a little extra edge. Throw in potions, bombs, and some fancy footwork, and you've got yourself some pretty strategic, satisfying battles. It's not easy at first, but once you get into the groove of dodging, parrying, and using signs, you'll be cutting through enemies like butter. Plus, there's something just so satisfying about Geralt's fighting animations. You can tell he's been doing this for a while, and it shows. Now let's talk about the story. You're on a quest to find Ciri, your sort of adopted daughter who's gone missing, and the world is falling apart because the Wild Hunt, basically a bunch of spooky undead horsemen, are chasing after her. The story is emotional, intense, and full of twists with some of the best characters you'll find in any game. And when I say characters, I mean characters. People like Yennefer and Triss are going to stick with you long after the credits roll, not to mention the endless cast of weirdos and heroes you'll meet along the way. And listen, we've got to talk about Gwent. Yes, Gwent, the card game within the game that's so addictive, it could probably stand as its own thing. I'm telling you, you'll start off thinking, I don't need to play cards in a fantasy world, but give it time. Pretty soon, you'll be hunting down rare cards and challenging NPCs to matches like your life depends on it. Honestly, Gwent should come with a warning label, may cause loss of hours of real life time. But here's why The Witcher 3 is absolutely worth your money. It's got depth. The choices you make feel important. The characters have real, relatable emotions. The world is alive with so much detail it's ridiculous. And no matter what you do, whether you're out slaying a vampire, romancing a sorceress, or just chilling in a tavern with a mug of ale, it all feels real. There aren't many games that can pull off that level of immersion, but The Witcher 3 nails it. Plus, it's still getting updates and new content to this day. The expansions alone are basically full games in themselves. Hearts of Stone and Blood and Wine add hours of new quests, storylines, and areas to explore. So, if you've been sleeping on this one, do yourself a favor and pick it up. You'll get more bang for your buck than almost any other game out there, and you'll be able to say you've lived through one of the best RPG experiences ever made.
Let me finish telling it.
Ghost of Tsushima. Alright, If you've ever wanted to feel like a total samurai badass slicing through enemies in one of the most beautiful open worlds ever made, Ghost of Tsushima is your game. This thing is like stepping into a living, breathing samurai movie, and honestly, it might just ruin other open world games for you because the bar is set high with this one. You play as Jin Sakai, a samurai on a mission to save Tsushima Island from a Mongol invasion. Sounds straightforward, right? Wrong. Jin's whole journey is about more than just fighting the enemy, it's about him wrestling with his honor and figuring out how far he's willing to go to save his people. Do you fight with the traditional ways of the samurai face-to-face in glorious combat, or do you sneak around in the shadows, becoming the ghost that strikes fear into the Mongols? This game gives you that choice, and it makes you feel every bit of that internal struggle. First off, let's talk about the world. Tsushima Island is breathtaking. I'm not even exaggerating, it's one of the most stunning open world environments ever put into a game. From the golden fields of pampas grass swaying in the wind to the dense, misty forests and snowy mountain peaks, every single frame of this game could be a wallpaper. And the colors, man, they just pop. You'll find yourself constantly stopping to take in the views, and honestly, that's a big part of the experience. The game even has this beautiful mode called Guiding Wind that helps you find your way, so there's no need for a clunky HUD. It's just you, the wind, and a sword. It doesn't get more zen than that. Now, the combat is chef's kiss. It's got that perfect balance of satisfying, fluid, and straight up brutal. If you've ever wanted to feel like a real samurai parrying strikes, dodging arrows, and slicing through enemies in a single, deadly blow, this game absolutely nails that feeling. You've got a ton of different stances and techniques that make every fight feel tactical, but in a way that's still fun and not overwhelming. The duels in particular, oh man, they're intense. These one-on-one showdowns are straight out of a samurai movie, slow, deliberate, and then bam, a quick flurry of deadly strikes. You'll feel like a total warrior. But if you're more into sneaking around and taking enemies out ninja style, you can go that route too. Jin slowly starts adopting these stealth tactics, and the game does a great job of making you feel like you're breaking the rules of the samurai code, but also giving you the tools to pull off some pretty slick assassinations. Poison darts, smoke bombs, kunai, this game makes sneaking around just as fun as charging in with your katana. And the best part? The game never forces you to pick one style. You can blend both, playing however you feel in the moment. And I've got to give a shout out to the story. It's this perfect mix of personal stakes for Jin and this larger epic tale about saving the island. You've got all the classic samurai drama, honor, loyalty, betrayal, but it's done so well. You'll really feel connected to Jin and the people he's trying to protect, and the relationships he builds, especially with characters like his uncle Lord Shimura and his friends like Yuna, are deep and impactful. The side quests are great too, with their own little mini stories that add so much to the world and its people. Plus you've got legendary tales that give you some of the most epic moments in the game, where you go full mythic samurai mode. And if you're the type of player who just likes to chill out and explore, Ghost of Tsushima gives you so much to do. There are shrines to climb, hot springs to relax in, because even samurai need a good soak, bamboo strikes to test your reflexes, and foxes, so many adorable foxes leading you to hidden secrets. It's the kind of game that rewards you for just existing in its world, whether you're hunting down Mongol camps or just riding your horse through the wilderness. Bottom line, Ghost of Tsushima is a must play. It's not just a game, it's an experience. From the gorgeous world to the slick combat and deeply emotional story, you're getting your money's worth and then some. Plus, who doesn't want to feel like a samurai warrior for a few hours? Trust me, you'll be hooked. Metro Exodus. If you're into intense, atmospheric shooters that make you feel like every breath could be your last, then Metro Exodus is 100% worth your money. This game is like a gritty road trip through the end of the world, and I mean that in the best possible way. It's part survival horror, part first-person shooter, and part let's see how long I can survive without freaking out, and it nails every bit of that tension. You play as Artyom, who's been through some stuff in the previous Metro games, but this time it's all about leaving the underground tunnels and heading out into the great unknown, the post-apocalyptic Russian wilderness. The game's world is brutal. The radiation is a constant threat, the mutants are nastier than ever. And then there are the people, let's just say not everyone you meet out there is exactly friendly. It's survival at its finest, where you're constantly scavenging for resources, making sure your gear is working, and hoping your gas mask filter doesn't run out in the middle of a fight. One of the coolest things about Metro Exodus is the mix of linear, story-driven missions and open world environments. You're not just stuck in tight corridors like in the previous games this time, you're traveling across Russia, hopping on and off a train with your ragtag group of survivors. The game throws you into different environments, from snowy wastelands to creepy, overgrown forests, and each one is packed with atmosphere. It's like every new location you visit has its own personality, and trust me, some of those personalities are downright terrifying.
They will get it. We'll cross it no matter what those fanatics.
But it's not all doom and gloom. Well, mostly it is. The game gives you a lot of freedom in how you approach each situation. Want to go in guns blazing? You can, but you better hope you've got the ammo for it. Prefer to sneak around and take enemies out silently? Go for it. There's a lot of strategy here, and the game encourages you to experiment with different playstyles. And the guns, oh man, the customization is off the charts. You can tweak and modify your weapons in so many ways, making them feel like they're yours, as if they're just as worn and weathered as you are by the end of the game. And let's talk about the visuals. Metro Exodus is gorgeous. Sure, it's set in a wasteland, but it's probably the prettiest wasteland you'll ever see. The lighting, the weather effects, the detail in every environment, it's all top notch. Whether you're creeping through an abandoned building at night with nothing but a flashlight or watching the sunset over a ruined city, the game just looks incredible. It adds so much to the immersion, making you feel like you're really there, living through the apocalypse one terrifying moment at a time. If you're looking for a single player experience that's immersive, intense, and full of heart-pounding moments, Metro Exodus is absolutely worth your money. It's got a story that'll keep you hooked, combat that'll keep you on your toes, and a world that's equal parts beautiful and deadly. Just don't forget to keep an eye on your gas mask filter, you're gonna need it. Max Payne 3. Alright, let's talk about Max Payne 3, the game that took everyone's favorite hard-drinking, pill-popping, slow-motion diving ex-cop and threw him straight into the chaos of Sao Paulo. If you're looking for a game that's gritty, fast-paced, and absolutely drenched in bullet time, this is the one. Max has been through some serious stuff over the years, and in Max Payne 3 he's not exactly doing much better. He's older, more bitter, and yeah, still downing pills and whiskey like it's water. But what makes this game great is that it doesn't shy away from Max's broken state. He's not your clean-cut hero, he's a guy who's just trying to make it through the day without getting killed or falling deeper into his own misery. It's a bit darker, a little more depressing, but in that Max Payne way that just works. Now, let's get into the action, because man, this is where Max Payne 3 shines. The gunplay is chef's kiss good, it's slick, it's intense, and most importantly, it's all about that sweet, sweet bullet time. You'll be diving through the air in slow motion, dodging bullets and picking off enemies like you're starring in your own action movie. There's just something so satisfying about nailing headshots while everything slows down around you. It never gets old, and Rockstar made sure it feels smooth as butter. The game's set in Sao Paulo, Brazil, and honestly, it's a bit of a departure from the gritty New York streets we're used to seeing Max in. But it works. The favelas, the nightclubs, the luxury high-rises, they all bring a fresh vibe to the series. And Rockstar nailed the look and feel of the setting, making it feel alive and dangerous. Every shootout feels like a scene out of a movie, and the level of detail in the environments just adds to that cinematic feel. But it's not just about looking good. The story, while more straightforward than the previous games, is still packed with that classic Max Payne noir vibe. Max is hired as a bodyguard for some wealthy folks, and surprise, everything goes horribly wrong. You've got betrayals, corruption, and Max's signature voiceovers that are as cynical as ever. It's like being in a dark, twisted action flick, but with way more emotional baggage. If you're a fan of stylish, intense shooters with a good story and a protagonist who's just as messed up as the situations he gets into, Max Payne 3 is absolutely worth your money. It's got some of the best gunplay you'll find, a gritty narrative that pulls no punches, and of course more slow motion diving than you'll know what to do with. Just don't forget to pop a few painkillers along the way, Max certainly doesn't. Well, everyone, that was all for this video. I hope you enjoyed my list. I will see you in the next one. Please make sure to subscribe and leave a like. Have a good day. See ya.